Hi everyone. My name's Chris. I'm from the UK. I've been around in the saltwater marine hobby for 5-6 years now. Predominantly relied upon all the local and national Facebook groups. But for the first time, I decided to sort of try out some of the more the website-based forums, and that's how I've got myself onto Reef to Reef. And someone suggested, as I'm in the process of setting up a new system, that I do a post about it. I prefer to do a video rather than pictures and have to type out text. So here it is, and hope you enjoy it. So the new system is going to be an Evolution Aqua Reef Pro 1200S. Now the tank is not actually with me at the moment. I placed the order 2 days ago, and not counting down the minutes or seconds at all, but it's due to be with me in 9 days time. This has been a slow build. I've been getting everything together since May, so the tank is actually the last piece of the puzzle. What I wanted to do was to go through the equipment that I've purchased, why I've made those purchase choices. I've done another video on my aquascape with Real Reef Rock, and also on my quarantine system that's up and running with a Firefish. So yeah, without further ado, onto my first bit of equipment. So this is my return pump, TMC Reef DC aquarium pump. It's rated to 8,000 litres per hour. The tank that I'm getting has a requirement for 5,000 litres per hour, but I didn't want to buy a tank, buy a pump, that operated to 5, because I didn't want to be operating it at full pelt, obviously 24/7. I think it's better to leave some spare in the pump. TMC, very reliable brand, good customer service. The shop that I bought this from in the UK is from David Austin, owner of Reef Exotics in Colchester. So yeah, this was actually my first purchase. So it's controllable. Obviously you can see up here, so you can specifically control the output from that. It's got other functions such as feeding as well, and obviously it starts off slowly and builds up until it reaches full power. I have previously predominantly operated using like the J-Cod pumps, and whereas I've never had any problems with them, I was just hearing more and more people talk about them in a lottery aspect, in that, you know, you get them, some work perfectly for years on end, others have had problems with them. So I just thought I would try out another brand of pump, and this is the one that I settled on. Bit of a mid-range price point, as opposed to some of the more expensive versions and brands as well. Okay, so that's the return pump over there. Okay, so next up, the temperature controller. So this was originally simply Aquaria. Obviously it was bought out by D&D. Yeah, it's got 2 plugs on it, one for heating, one for cooling. I'll be running 2 heaters off of that, so actually I'll show you now. So I've got 2 titanium heaters, so obviously no thermostat. No need for the thermostat in those, because obviously that's controlled by this guy. I'll just be putting a double block into the heating socket on this one, and obviously then I'll be able to run the 2 heaters off of that. Obviously one's a backup for the other one in case the temperature were to be dropping, one of these fails. Obviously within the temperature controller here, so you've got an alarm if the temperature drops below the level that you set, and you've got your variance point as well. I'd be working to a variance point of 0.3 degrees, so you can keep it really sort of tight knit on that temperature target that you're after. I've always operated my temperature to 28 degrees Celsius. Might be a lot warmer than what most people kind of suggest. People do suggest, you know, that 25 to 26 degrees range. Here in the UK we have had a bit of a heat wave, although it's not with us today. people who are operating to that lower range have been posting on the group stressing because their temperatures shot up through the roof, whereas my quarantine tank has stayed exactly the same because it was already set high, and you're not getting those big swings from a lower temperature to a higher temperature. And I believe as well, sort of from research and advice given from other people, that actually the temperature of reefs are a lot warmer than people realise. And 28 degrees is not an unusual temperature for natural reefs. So that's what I've chosen to go with. I have also got on my quarantine system an Aquamedic temperature controller. Don't think it's as good as this one, purely for the simple fact that the variance that you can set it to has to be in a whole degree, so 1.0, whereas this one is 0.3. I'm going to be working to, so obviously a lot more fine-tuned. Okay, so that's the temperature controller and the heaters. What next? Okay, so here we have the TMC V2 Auto Top Up. It's just simply a pump to obviously go in your RO container. The float valve that you can see here for engaging the switch, and something they have changed actually. This part here, the attachment for the float valve onto the side of the sump, used to be a suction cup that you had like a twisty knob that would kind of make it go tighter and tighter, and just found it to be quite a pain in the backside, to be fair. They seem to obviously change it to a magnet now. I haven't used it yet, but hopefully that will be much better, because in all honesty it's the only issue that I've ever had with them. I have used I can't remember the exact brand. Is it Auto Aqua or something like that, like the smart micro auto top-ups. That is my favourite one. I've had that before, but in the UK with a price point of about £80–85, versus this one at about 40, half the price. I just decided to go with something cheaper for this, that I know is reliable, I know that works, so that I can spend funds on things that I want to kind of be a little bit more extravagant on. So that's that. Couple of things to hand. So I've gone with some Fosgard. I ideally initially don't want to be running any additional reactors. Just looking to keep the need for any extra pumps to a minimum. So Fosgard just goes into a media bag in your sump. And is very good at controlling your phosphate levels. This should see me out quite well for quite a while, so I'll see how it goes with this initially. I can always obviously change to an alternative product. I've used like ATM Agent Green. I could always use that supplementary to this, or obviously I could use a reactor and kind of go with GFO. This is obviously an aluminium based phosphate silicate remover. Okay, so that's the Fosgard. Carbon. I've always used carbon in all of my systems. I've gone with the Red Sea Reef Spec carbon here, and I don't know really what else there is to say about carbon really. I don't know the particular ins and outs as to what makes one carbon better than another. Just gone with a trusted brand for Red Sea there. Yeah, so that's that. Just as a quick mention actually, so the heaters that I had, they also came from Reef Exotics. The temperature controller, that came from H2O Aquatics in Brentwood, as did the auto top-up. The Fosgard, that came alongside the carbon here. No, it didn't. No, so the Fosgard came again from Dave at Reef Exotics. The carbon came from Marine Reef, also in Colchester, which unfortunately now was closed down. But yeah, that's where I got that from. So shout out to them. So you know that I was talking about the extravagances. Well, this is one of the extravagances. One of the really important factors with maintaining our systems is reading our salinity levels. I absolutely hated, and mainly because of my shocking eyesight, looking down a refractometer and just trying to judge exactly where that blue line hits on the gauge. So what I did was I went out and I got myself one of these Milwaukee digital refractometers. I have used this now. I've obviously used it on the Core 18 system. Much easier. It's accurate. It's been calibrated with RO water. Obviously, it's calibrated from the factory, and I found it fantastic to use and very easy to set up and calibrate and use. The only drawback that you have is that when you set it up, when you turn it on, I think it's approximately 3 minutes that the display will turn on for. Once it's turned off, you have to recalibrate it with RO. So obviously, if you're making up a batch of salt water, you test it, it's not quite right, you need to add some more. Obviously you've got doing that time, you've got dissolving time. Chances are that's going to take longer than 3 minutes. When you come back, that screen's off and you have to recalibrate it with RO before you can use it again. So it's a minor inconvenience, but I much prefer using this over that. It's over, benchmark, it's over £100, so you are looking, more than double the price of a standard refractometer, but for me personally, it's worth it. So this little guy, this came from H2O Aquatics in Brentwood in the UK as well. So what else have we got here? Just wanted to back up the use of the Real Reef Rock in my DT with just a bit of extra denitrifying media in my sump. So I've gone with the Marine Pure. I know there's tons of various different products on the market. I just wanted to go with this one. Looked at some videos, particularly on Facebook, and just saw that the flow through of water through these was amazing. It was almost like the water was just draining straight through it, which just shows how porous this is as a media. So this was picked up from probably the best, one of the best marine shops in the UK, most certainly in the Essex area, Advanced Aquarium Consultancy. That's where I picked this up. It's the only thing I've actually picked up from there, but I will be, many trips will be going there for livestock. Okay, so that's the filter media. Alright, so this was another extravagance. So historically, when it comes to wave makers, I have, without any exception actually, always gone with the J-Cod. So you have the RW series and the SW series. Personally, never had any problems with them, but with this being a slow build, it enabled me to, fund-wise, go for much more expensive things because it was spreading the cost out over a much bigger period of time. So I have gone with one, two gyros, and obviously the controller on top. What's to say, really? They've been around a long time. I think when they first came out, there were some issues with them, but they've been sorted out. And I've heard now that that they're extremely reliable. The controllability and the various programs on here are superb. And just that whole gyro effect, just getting a massive amount of water movement going through the tank is very important. Obviously I'm going to be looking at have some SPS, so it's vitally important for that. No dead spots in the tank for controlling my nutrients. Yeah, I just, as I say, always gone with J-Cod. This was the next one up for me, so that was my choice. So these guys have also come from Dave at Reef Exotics. Got them very quickly and very easily for me. Yeah, so that's those. Okay, next up, so I'm just going to have to put the camera down for a second. Okay, so here we have two Kessel A3XD WE Tuner Blue LED lights. They'll be spaced every 2 foot, or 2 foot apart, really, over the 4 foot kind of tank distance. Historically, I have used the Max Spec razors. Can't say I had a problem with them, but I never noticed any significant coral growth with them. Whether that was down to the lights or whether that was down to me as a reef keeper, probably most certainly the early days of my reef keeping, I don't know. Then I went on to have a couple of AI Prime HDs. These were fantastic lights on smaller systems that I was running at the time. Absolutely loved them. The one thing I did find that was a big pain in the backside was the controllability and the temptation to tweak and adjust and mess around with it all the time. So this is why I've settled on the Kessel. Obviously they have their LED matrix, they have their Kessel technology, and it's all designed around providing what corals need, and having some degree of tunability with the color depth and with the intensity of the lighting, but one will never have an effect on the other due to the way that their technology works. Sometimes simple is better, and that's kind of the approach that I've gone with these. In addition to those, I've got the spectral controller. Now I have actually had an A160 WE before on a smaller system. Had experience of using the controller on that, and it's very, very easy, very, very simple. Again, gives you the ability to make changes. Have time points throughout a day, where the lights ramp up, ramp down, changes in colour and intensity, but again without the whole tweaking all the colour spectrums, reds, blues, greens, UVs. It's still follows in line with the technology that Kessel are famous for. Along with that, you've just got this data link cable, so that's just to daisy chain one light to the other, so that they're all controlled by the spectral controller there. And I've got two of the gooseneck. Two of the gooseneck, can't get into focus. Two of the gooseneck mounts there for the tank to go on as well. Well, blimey, we're nearly there. Let me just put these guys out of the way. Sorry, bear with me. Right, sorry about this. Right, okay, next up then, some test kits. Just for the sheer amount that you get in one of these test kits, I've got the Marine Care multi-test kit. You have ammonia, nitrite, nitrate, pH and alkalinity. I'm only using the first four. I'm not a particularly big fan of the alkalinity version in this one. You have the Pro test, which has the dial. This one is just working on a pipette basis, and I just don't like that really. So, but still, around about £40 for all those test kits, and under the Red Sea name, the accuracy of those test kits, I just think that's fantastic. So that served me really, really well already on the quarantine system. I forgot to mention actually all that Kessel equipment that also came from Dave at Reef Exotics in Colchester, so Dave and Reef Exotics have done very well out of me so far. Now I'm not going to need these tests initially, but I've been informed again from Dave at Reef Exotics that the Colombo tests were pretty good. So I thought what I would do is I would get these tests as they're the less important ones for me at the moment when the tank will be just up and running. So I've got magnesium, alkalinity, calcium and phosphate there. I can't really say how there'll be. I've used Salifert, I've used Elos, I've used Red Sea predominantly. Haven't used these before. We'll see how they go. You know, they're pretty cheap. Hopefully, you know, but probably similar price point to Salifert in all honesty. I'll see how they go. If I don't get on with them, it's not a huge sum of money, and you know, can look at an alternative. So that was all from Dave at Reef Exotics as well. So I'm going to do a bit of a turnaround now. So I've decided to go with the Red Sea Salt. Over the years, I've used Red Sea Coral Pro, Tropic Marine Pro Reef, Reef Octopus, Hot Salt. What else have I used? And obviously, and this now. Oh, and Aquaforest as well. I have to say my absolute favourite salt and the best results I've had is with the ATM Hot Salt. It would have been my preference to use, but in the UK for some time now we've been sold out. There's been none available anywhere. At the time when I wanted to get my quarantine system set up, it wasn't available. I personally don't prefer. I don't like elevated levels, such as the Red Sea Coral Pro. So obviously ATM is the hot salt is low alkalinity, etc. And this was the next one that was sort of closest to that that had available to me. So I've gone with the Red Sea Salt Blue Bucket. Strangely, given it's got reduced levels, it's recommended by Red Sea for an SPS dominant system, which, from however it used to be, seems to be actually the opposite. But you know, they're experts, they know what they're talking about. But for now I'll be going with this salt, and I will see if there is a sustained. The hot salts come back into the UK now, but I'll see how well that's sustained. I don't want to be chopping and changing salts, especially once I do have corals, inverts, etc. in the tank. So I'll just see how the reliability of the availability of that is. Okay, well, there we go on the floor. So I've decided to go with black sand. Not everyone's cup of tea, I know. Got 2 bags of that, and one there and one just hiding away there. I've used it before on other systems. I think it was fantastic against the corals. White sand that we all attain for never stays white. You know, unless you're going to get a goby that's going to cover your corals in sand constantly, or have an absolute army of sand sifters and Assisera snails and conches. You know, it's white sand is never going to stay white. So I really like black sand as a backdrop for corals on the sandbed in particular. So that's what I've gone with. I've used it before. It's just my preference. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. Skimmer. I have gone with a reliable Bubble Magus Curve 7. So in terms of my tank volume, that is I think it's round about double the rating, which, you know, in terms of skimmers is the minimum you kind of look for, really. So it's going to do the job on that front. That too has come from Dave at Reef Exotics. There's lots of skimmers out there, isn't there? You know, and they're all, you know, Nios, Deltec, you know, loads and loads and loads. I guess this is probably one of those ones where I wasn't prepared to spend £200-300 on a skimmer, and there is a particular reason for that, actually, which we're coming on to now. So the final piece of the puzzle that I have here is a Clarisea SK3000. I've heard extremely good reports regarding these. I will be plumbing this directly into the drain from the tank. I will have a hose tail, a reducer, then a hose tail into the downpipe, flexible pipe, then plumb straight into a hose tail attached to the Clarisea. Multiple reports that I've read and spoken to who have used this, and it's taken that much debris and detritus out of the water column that their NO3, PO3 levels, PO4 levels have dropped through the floor. Their skimmer has been skimming out far less than it was